Hey guys, it's Linda Winter with another Winter Designs project. All right, so you've seen these before, my storage pods. These cool storage pods that hold all kinds of cool things. Add the hanger, don't add a hanger, add buttons, add loops, add snaps, whatever it is you want. You guys have loved these. Thank you so much. I love them. This is my favorite template right now, my favorite go-to project. And everybody's been asking for additional sizes. So this is the small. So I came out with an extra small. I'm gonna stick this inside so you can see how much teeny tinier he is. So we've got extra small and small. This one, you can see even here, it's even smaller because I used a fusible foam here, and this is just a plain old interfacing like an SF101. So these guys here are my extra smalls. This size is my medium large. Now I call it ML, medium large, because this is the medium, and you can see there's some difference there in size, but then this one is the large, and the large is huge. So people were telling me that the large was almost too big, so I made one in between. This is the medium large, this is the large, and this is the medium. So there are 5 sizes now that you can make. So I've got my old sizes here, large, medium, small. I've written the measurements on here so y'all can see these. I'm gonna flip this around. 14¼ inches tall. This is 20 inches wide when you have this on the fold. My large is 20⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻⁻ and this is 28 1/4 inch wide. So not fat quarter friendly. This one, fat quarter friendly, 14 1/4 by 20. So that's my large, that's my medium, and my small right here, 10 1/4 inches high, 14 inches wide when you take advantage of the fold. So again, this one is fat quarter friendly as well as this one. Let's go over to the new sizes. So my medium large, if I were to start all over, I'd have extra large, large, medium, small, and a extra small. But this is medium large, 16 inches tall by 22 1/2. Not fat quarter friendly, unless you've got an oversized fat quarter for some reason. Most of the time that doesn't happen. And here is my extra small, my new little guy. I love this one. This one is going to be so much fun when I show you what you can do with it. 8 1/4 inches tall, 11 1/2 inches wide. This is your fold. So your fold line here. Let's take a look at this guy. This is one that I mentioned that I used fusible foam for. This one right here, I don't know if y'all can tell, but that's a bandana. I have a bandana and a bandana, and I put some of the fusible interfacing on it. It's soft. This guy here, you notice how there's a seam here? I don't have seams because this is the fold, but I only had a little bit of scraps and a little bit of the fusible foam. So I put a seam down the middle. I don't mind. This is a great scrap buster when you do that. Just know that your box bottoms, you're going to have to kind of accommodate on the other side. Wider seam allowance, narrower seam allowance to make up for that seam allowance that's here. But this little guy, as I mentioned, you're going to really like this because I'm going to grab a bottle of water and my cell phone. Now, neither of these are really set up for the way I would do this, but if you want a water bottle holder, do you see the strap here? We would have this strap, but what I want you to do is add another strap. So I've got this strap on here. We're going to wrap it around the bottle of water. And then what I want you to do is get another strap that you've attached here, longer to here. Now it could even be longer, and let's do a wide shot so you can see me wearing this. If I had a long strap around, this could be a crossbody little water bottle carrier, or put a longer strap and just wear it over my shoulder. So for all of you that have been asking for water bottle holders, this little guy here, it actually works really well, especially because of this little strap that you add right there. So add a strap on top of that, and that strap is just a ribbon. We can do the same thing. Let me show you there. You can see how I've attached it here. We can do the same thing with our cell phone. So I've got this in here. Again, make this a little bit longer so that it will go over your cell phone. You can see that won't go over my cell phone, but make it a little bit longer so that it snaps basically over, it goes over my cell phone, and then again, crossbody style. So wear it. I love wearing crossbody bags and having my cell phone with me. So this would be a really cute one. What else can you do with it? Well, all those doggy goodies. You make this little treat bag for all of those treats that you give to your pooches, and you can even put a grommet right in here. So let's go back to this one. Let's imagine that this is doggy fabric, or for my little kitties too, but for doggies, we add a grommet right here, and with that grommet, I can put in the trash bags, you know, the bags that you use to go pick up the doggy doo-doo stuff. So you can put that in there and the bags can come out here. And again, wear it crossbody bag. If you'd like to see those projects done, just post in the comments below and I'll make that as one of the videos that I do. I'm going to get these out of the way, and I want to show you basically the same process that we did before to make the others. I want to show you a few other tools though that really come in handy. If you have a ham, hams are wonderful for these kinds of projects. These are hams here. They come in different sizes and shapes. I'm going to grab this one here because when you go to turn this and you go to press this, you want those bottoms to be really nice. And you see how I'm basically going to be able to play with this. I don't put this down here and press all the way. I'm going to hold it, and I can pull that fabric and press and turn this and pull. I don't know if you can see, I'm pulling the fabric down there and press, and then pull the fabric and press. So hams are really, really versatile. Same thing when we go to the larger sizes. This is the medium large, but this ham works for the medium and the medium large and the large. Can you see how I'm going to hold inside of here? I've got my hand inside of here, and I'll press this way. I'm holding that in. So if you don't have hams, get yourself some hams. These guys work out really well. Of course, you need the clips, straight pins, whatever it is you want, precision scissors, tweezers, those kinds of things. And when you're working with any kind of an interfacing that's fusible, this is the sheet that I love so much. When I'm working on my fabrics, these are the fabrics I'm going to work on today. When I'm working with my fabrics, before I cut them out, I put my fabric down and I just do a rough cut usually of the template. I just take my template and I fold it in half. Let's see, here it is. And I'm basically going to fold this just kind of like this. And I'm just doing a rough cut of that fabric. When I go to press this, I don't want this stuff down on my ironing top, and I certainly don't want it on my iron. So when I go to press with this, I'm going to take this, fold this over, and press. If I do get any of this gunky stuff on top of here, a credit card will scrape it off. Martelli makes a matte smoother. Imagine a matte smoother just scraping off any of that fusible. It's a whole lot better to be on here because it's not going to stick to this. It will come right off. On your iron, you're going to have to use one of my iron cleaners. These guys here I love so much that I have them on my website. The iron cleaner I have on my website as well. Okay, I don't want to go through all of the details because the details on this are on my previous videos. So go watch those two videos. What I do want to do though is talk about one more thing before we get into the little bit of thing. Do you see the tan? And do you see the black? This is no slip material. You can see how that grabs even these two fabrics that I have here with the interfacing on the back, and they're not even lined up. This tan grabs as well. This is our no slip material. Martelli makes this. They make my templates, my winter design templates. Sometimes the material is going to be tan, sometimes it's going to be black. No big deal. They both work interchangeably, and they both are no slipping, no kidding. All right, so what I want to do is grab my fabric. I'm going to fold this over, and I have here a fusible interfacing that's a little bit thicker, but not quite as thick. Can you see this? It's not quite as thick as a foam or the fleece or anything like that, but it does have a little bit of stiffness to it. You grab whatever it is you like. I just like using those guys. The two together work really well. Let me grab my Martelli rotary cutter. I've got the fold here, and what I do want you to do is go mark fold. That way when you color in, we make metallic Sharpies. When you go color those in, you're not going to end up doing this. Now, I don't have enough fabric here, but I have done that before. When I'm tired and can't sleep, this is not where the fold is. This is where the fold is. So go mark that. I've got my fabric folded. Because I've got this fusible that's not so heavy, I can cut all these layers at the same time. I want to make sure that my fold is right along the edge of the fabric. And when I go to cut, I'm going to cut and go right off that edge. And I'm going to cut and square off. We're going to square off that base down here. And this is what's so cool about Martelli designs. These templates right here with those cuts, those are cut marks, and those cut marks let my blade go in. Now it may or may not cut all the way. Can you see I've got a couple pieces of thread or a couple little threads there. I'm going to try, and I would rather have a couple less than a couple more. That's our seam allowance that we're cutting into. But do you see how I've turned the template when I go to cut those? All right, I'm going to lift this up. I'm going to take those precision scissors that I love so much. You can grab snippets, whatever it is, and I'm going to cut just those few threads that are there. This is going to be my lining, and then the other fabric I have is going to be my outside. Now notice what I did. I didn't cut perfectly straight. Who cares? That's my seam allowance. So I'm going to get rid of this over here, and then we'll throw these away, and we're going to cut our next piece. Now the next piece, I've got some directional. When you do directional, when you want to fussy cut anything, you want to think about placement. I have this pumpkin spice and everything nice. I don't really want that screaming on here, but I do want a little bit of it. So I place this along here, and I'm kind of eyeballing and saying, spice, everything nice. That's what I want to have in there. So I place that template on here, and I'm basically going to be looking right here as my fold. I want to bring this with my scissors and cut right to where that fold is, basically. And what that's going to let me do is have that to where that's going to be basically where I want it. You know, we make fussy cut frames for a lot of our templates. I don't need a fussy cut frame for this. I just want to snip so that it's close enough. Do you see how I've got that snip right there? And that's where my fold is. So we're going to line this up, and I've given myself extra fabric on here, so it's not that big of a deal. What I do want to do though is flip this over. I'm going to hold this down. I'm going to flip this over, and I'm going to feel up here, and I can see this is going to be up there. I want to decide, do I like that up there, or do I want to bring it down a little bit? I don't have a whole lot of room here, so it's not a lot of play. If you are going to fussy cut, that's the time that you do before you cut off a piece like I've done here. All right, so I'm looking at that fold again. I'm going to take my rotary cutter, and I'm going to go ahead and cut, whoops, have it open first, and cut all the way off. All right, so when you cut, we're cutting along with that no-slip material. I'm going to turn that template just like we do with all of our no-slip templates. And if you're not right along that edge, you go trim those up. I like to trim off the bottom first. I cut off a straight edge. I turn that template and I cut. Now, whether you're left-handed or right-hand doesn't really matter so much because our rotary cutters are going to work beautifully with this. And again, I'm cutting in, and I want to look to see, do I need to go trim off? And I've got a little bit that I want to trim off on both of those. So we're going to grab our scissors, and you can see it's just barely hanging on. So I'm going to trim that off there. I'm going to turn this over, and I've got just a little bit of trimming to do there. These are my box corners, and I love that we came up with this technology. I don't know if this was Lisa or Shane that figured this out with our tasket basket that was so amazing, but this means I don't have to do any measuring. This is going to give me the perfect size box bottom for this project that I'm working on. Now, if you all want to make box bottoms and you don't want it to be the storage pod, guess what? I have a set of templates that will do that for you. Box it, place it. I don't even remember the rest of it. It's got 3 names to it. It's a crazy name. I don't know why I did that because I can't remember it. So these guys here, box it, square it, place it. That's the template. Okay, so this can be my inside, this can be my outside, or vice versa. A lot of times I'll decide this guy here, I had wanted this to be the outside, and then I decided I liked this one for the inside. So you choose what it is you want. All right, what we're going to be doing at the sewing machine is sewing and sewing and sewing, because both of these have this fusible on here that's the same. If I had a fusible foam, you know, then I would be working a little bit differently. Let me show you this one. This is the fusible foam inside here. This originally was going to be the outside. This isn't fusible foam. This is this interfacing that I have on here, but I decided I wanted this to show on the outside. So I've got that fusible foam that gives it just a really nice stability inside. Imagine somebody showing up at your door for Thanksgiving or for whatever holiday, and they've got bread, they've got kinds of, all kinds of goodies, maybe some desserts, some brownies, whatever it is, in this little basket. And again, you choose what kind of a handle it is that you want. All right, so I'm going to grab this because this is the handle that I want. So I've got a ribbon here. We're going to go over to the sewing machine. I'm going to grab my scissors. I'm going to grab, let's see, pinking shears potentially you might want to use. If I were doing the medium large, or the large, I would definitely pink those corners and the edges there. So let's head over to the sewing machine. Now, at the sewing machine, again, I want to decide which one's going to be the inside and which one's going to be the outside. It doesn't matter as much for this, but whichever is my inside, that's where I'm going to be putting a little bit of a gap. So you've got to decide, do I like this on the outside or do I like this on the inside? Remember I talked about that spice, so that's going to be the outside. This one's going to be my inside. You can use pins, you can use clips if you want to. Totally up to you. What I'm going to do though, I've got a joining foot or a seam guide foot on here, and what I want to do is move my needle over a little bit. It's basically like a 1/4 inch piecing foot on here, which really is nice. We're going to back stitch a little bit, and we're going to stitch just a bit here, and then I'm going to lock those stitches in place by back stitching again. I'm going to cut my threads. I'm going to jump down a couple inches, and I'm going to now stitch again, back stitch here. And we're going to go all the way to the edge, and then we're going to back stitch. All right, so we've done one side. I've left myself an opening. This is going to be my turning area here. It's not a very big opening, and guess what? It's not a very big piece. If I had foam on here, I would have left myself much more of an opening here. You decide if you want to squeeze it through like I do, or do you want to give yourself a little bit more room. We're going to back stitch again. When we get to that edge, same thing. Now, you can go ahead and do the same thing to the front, or you can now box those bottoms. I'm going to go ahead and finger press that seam open. Now, this is where you could use those pinking shears if you want. I'm going to finger press those seams open. I'm going to pop this open here. And what I want to do is line up all of this. I don't know if you can see, I'm squishing this part down a little bit, and I'm going to again bring up those side seams. Now, you can pin, you can clip if you want to. I'm going to go ahead and just add one pin there. And I want to start, no big deal that this right here, do you see how there's a little bit of an extra there and a little bit of an extra there? I don't have a seam on this side. I do have a seam on this side. So we've got just a hair off, and that works fine. I'm just keeping everything lined up. Back stitch at those corners, and my seam allowance is a little bit narrower than what I want it to be. So what am I going to do? I'm going to go ahead and stitch here, and then I'm going to stitch back down and make sure that everything is good. Back stitching at the corners. These are the corners, and because this is the lining here, it's not going to have a whole lot of stress on this, but the outside part, when I get to here, I do want to make sure that I've locked in those corners really, really well. All right, we've done one side. We're going to do the other side. Our boxed corners for the lining, almost done. And notice I've got those two seams here. So again, you can use the pinking shears. You can press these open. I'm just going to finger these, and I'm going to put one pin in the direction where I'm sewing. And then the others are going to be basically lining up. And these corners will line up because I do have my seam on one side and I have my seam on the other side. All right, we're going to get that pin. Maybe I'm going to sew a little bit more. This is where a stiletto works really well too. If you don't have a stiletto, when you remove that pin, if your fabric starts to flip on you, you can use precision scissors, you can use tweezers, you can use whatever as your stiletto to pop in and out, just to hold that fabric down. Okay, so we've done our lining. We're going to put this aside. Now we're going to do the same thing here, except on this one, we're going to sew the side completely down. And again, if you feel the need to clip or pin, go right ahead. The stability of this Fusible that I have here is enough that I don't really feel the need to pin. And again, we built in our seam allowance here just a little bit. And again, decide if you want to trim. On the larger ones, or when I'm using the Fusible foam, we're definitely going to be trimming that out because that's a lot of bulk, and in those seams, it really does add up. All right, what am I doing? I'm pushing this out back towards me so that I can get everything nice and flat. And again, if you want to put a pin in place, go right ahead, or a clip, whatever. It's really up to you. Most of the time when I'm making one after another on these, I'm not pinning. I'm not holding that down. I'm just zipping through as I go. I'm going to stitch a little bit close, then remove that pin. No stitching over the pins. And because this is the outside piece, we want to make sure that we back stitched at those corners really good, because that's where all that stress will be. And I don't want this thing falling apart if I give this to somebody and they actually use it and abuse it. If they've used it and abused it, there's going to be stress on the fabric, but I don't want stress on the seams. All right. Now when I get close here, whoops, when I get close here to that pin, we'll just go ahead and pop that out. Again, with the pin removed, I used those scissors, but if I felt like that fabric was flipping back on me, I would go ahead and use that in there to make it nice and good. All right, so we have finished sewing our two pieces separately. Now we need to sew them together. I've used the same stabilizer, so it really doesn't matter which one I put inside. But if this is foam, Fusible foam, if this is fleece, anything where one is heavier than the other, then the one that goes inside should be the one that's heavier. So I'm going to flip this, and we're going to put this inside. So if this was the one that had a heavier weight stabilizer, foam, fleece, whatever it is, then this one would go inside here. Because they are different weights with those types of battings, linings, whatever it is, they're not going to line up as consistently. These guys, because they're the same, then it's not going to be that big of a deal. But if you are doing that, that's one of those things I didn't really stress a lot in the first two videos. So make sure that you remember they're not going to feel like they line up well. And if you are doing that, if you put this inside, your seam here is going to be all bunched up and you're going to have excess fabric. So if this is heavier, then put that inside. All right, so the first thing we want to do is clip, clip, clip. But I want to talk about straps. If you're going to add a strap, if you're going to add snaps, if you're going to add buttons, if you're going to add Velcro, whatever, then it doesn't matter so much as to the placement. But I'm going to add this on as a strap. So we're going to come back to here for a second. I'm going to look to see how much of a strap it is that I want and just kind of do a guesstimate. Now you can make the decision on this. And again, a snap would be really great because with the snap, then you can place it wherever it is you want. I'm cutting off a little bit. And what I want to be able to do is add these to this project now. So this is my inside, this is my outside. So you decide where you want it to go. I'm going to place this here. I'm going to grab a pin. Now Martelli makes our 1x6 rulers. We have a 2x6 ruler. I have my Box It, Square It, Place It set of templates that work really well. I'm going to eyeball it for now. And what I want to do is show you how to eyeball. I put my pins in place. I'm going to fold this over and I'm going to look to see, do they line up? You can see this one's a little bit further this way. Not that big of a deal because it's a strap, but I'm going to move it over just a little bit. What do? We come and we're going to top stitch this down. Right, I should say edge stitch, really. It's right along that edge. And if you want to go back and forth, if you know this is where you want that to be, then go ahead and lock that in place. If you're doing this to say, maybe I want my straps here, which is what I like to do, maybe I want my straps here, I can always go back and reposition them if we're doing top stitching. Maybe I don't want my straps here. If I don't stitch a whole lot, no big deal. Okay, so these are my straps, and what this is going to give me basically when this is turned over is it's going to hang. This is our outside here. Let's take a moment. And you can see that's where my strap is going to be. You can, at this point in time, decide, do I like this? Is this too long? Do I have it too far apart? You make that decision. Or again, you can always do that later on. Rip open those seams and just stitch those back in place. All right, when we sew, I don't want these guys catching inside of here. So I've got them laying down flat. I'm still going to have to check when I sew to make sure that I don't stitch those in place. We're going to push this in. And whatever you do, don't sweat it. This part of the detail, you can get all messed up and all emotional and all upset about everything, and don't sweat it. We're going to make it work. I'm lining up my seams. And again, this right here, you can open these up if you want to, left and right. You can trim those down. You can use the pinking shears, totally up to you. I'm going to just open up those seams. The other thing you notice too is I'm not pressing. If I were teaching you the right way to do this, I would say go to that ironing board and press those seams open all the way down, nice and flat. I don't do it, so I'm not going to tell you to do it, but you make the decision. Are these going to be gifts that you're going to be selling? All right, so remember when I said don't sweat it out? This guy here, and now we're going to pin these here, my center. When I pin that center, we're going to make everything else fit. Now this sewing machine, if I take this table out, I still don't have an arm that I can use. So we're going to be sewing probably from both sides on this. So what I want to do is line up those edges. I don't care what's happening inside. That doesn't matter right now. I'm going to put a pin here. I'm going to put a pin here. And these pins may be on the wrong side when I sew. And I don't care. I can fix that as I'm going. So I'm lining those up. I may be short a pin. We'll see. All right, so you can see right here, I'm going to line those up a little bit better. And then we're going to start sewing. We're going to sew probably from one side and then flip over and sew from the other side. Now I've still got that seam guide foot on here. You can take it off if you want to, or leave it on. I've got some excess fabric here, so I'm going to go ahead and just trim. That's the ribbon, really. And I've got pins in the way, so I want to make sure not to cut those pins because that's going to damage my scissors. I'm not so worried about the pin. I'm worried about my nice precision scissors. Okay, so we're going to trim off a little bit there just so that foot can do its job. All right, so as I said, we're going to trim, or we're going to start sewing from one side, and then we may switch over to the other. It doesn't really matter where you start because you've pinned your centers on the back, you've pinned your centers on the front. If you want to move your needle position over, I've still got probably a good 3/8 of an inch seam allowance here. You can make this as narrow as a scant 1/4 of an inch. So you decide where you want that to be, because you may want this to be a little bit taller even than we have it here. If you want it to be a little bit shorter, that's what I'm getting basically with the seam allowance. Now, do you notice how right here I've got this that's bunched up here and I've got this that's bunched up here? I'm not seeing all of this, and I don't care. I'm only dealing with maybe an inch or so in front of what I'm sewing. So it doesn't matter so much. And I'll know whether I need to flip this over. If you've done any bags or you've done anything small, then you know when you can sew from one side, and you know to see here, I'm kind of fighting with this a little bit, you'll know if you need to turn over to the other side. I've got a pin that I need to get rid of, and then I can kind of pop this up a little bit. And again, we're just fighting with a little bit of this, but you're not really fighting because you're just maneuvering. Now, this might be a good time for me to switch to the other side, but I'm going to try and I'm getting close to the center. So we're going to stop there. I'm going to pivot just a little bit. I'm going to move my fabric over. What I don't want you to do is get all of your fabric caught in here. All of that needs to be left intact, so don't let all that batting, the interfacing, the foam, the fusible, the whatever it is, get in the way. I'm coming around to where I started, and I'm just going to overlap my stitches just a little bit, and then we're good to go. All right, so what am I going to tell you to do? I'm going to tell you what I really do, but I don't have over here my scissors. Trim all of this bulk off here. All of that bulk will cause this knot to lay nicely. All I have are my little snippets, my little precision scissors, so I'm going to go in and snip and snip and snip. But I really would grab pinking shears. Pinking shears, they've become like my new best friend. I've been using them a lot. So if you don't have a good pair of pinking shears, then get a good pair of pinking shears. And pinking shears that work through fabric easily. Okay, so you can see I've done a lot of trimming there. What are we going to do? This is not my opening. My opening is right inside of here. So I'm going to pull that out. And I'm going to reach through. And again, you decided how big you wanted that hole to be. Ooh, I left my hole really tiny. So that's okay. We're going to get it to work. This is birthing the baby. Yep, I did leave a very small one. So we're going to pull through. And you want to pull, but not put stress on the fabric. I don't want my fabric stretching out of shape. I don't want anything ripping. Use your thumbs to push inside. And we're going to, once we get a good part of this through, then we're going to go ahead and push out those box bottoms. And again, the ironing board now would be a good thing for me to start working towards. And those hams that I talked about, these would be great for me to have too. At home, I've got that little iron right next to my sewing machine, so I don't have to get up and move. I've got on one side our Martelli, we've got a small cutting mat. I've got that on one side, and I've got this ironing station, which is our wool mat with a small iron, and I have it right next to there. So whatever it is that I'm doing, I don't have to get up and move, and I love that setup. Okay, so what am I doing? I'm pulling a little bit here, I'm pulling a little bit here. And again, I would be at the ironing board and just kind of pushing those things out. You can also use any kind of a turning tool, any kind of a pusher that you have, and get those corners nice and kind of poked out. And we just want it to get a little bit of shape. We are going to press this, but this is the only time that I'll really be able to push those corners completely out. This also lets you know if you've done a good job of sewing those corners down, because if you do push and you push through, then that means you need to go back and just reinforce those boxed corners a little bit. Okay, so we're pretty good there. Now, you can test this out by putting everything back inside, or you can go ahead and just start the process of finishing. What's the process of finishing? This closure right here. There's lots of different ways to close this up. You can do what I'm doing now, just pulling here, and that's going to kind of close on its own, and then I can just top stitch there. I don't really like that look in my box bags. So what I really would end up doing is using some glue right inside of there. Use some glue, grab your clips or your pins, and let that stick together. I also sell, because I like it so much, a permanent stick tape. It's a fabric tape. It works on so many different things, and you can use it too. So you decide how you want to do it. What am I not going to do? I'm not going to sew it by hand. This is a little storage pod that I'm going to be making a whole bunch of. I'm not going to sew these by hand, so that's not something you're going to see me doing. Okay, you notice what I'm doing. I'm finagling these right here, pulling this even here. See how I'm pulling that? I'm pulling and pulling. And again, I really would have that iron right next to me, because this is the part that goes from, it's okay, to, wow, I can't wait to make these. I'm going to be making more. So this guy here, I'm just going to kind of rub with my fingers, All that bulk that's there, if you trim that, then you're not going to have all that bulk. But you can see there's a whole lot of bulk there. That's all that Fusible that I have in there. So you want to make sure that you trim all of that down. But what I want to do is tuck this inside. And then we're going to go back and look at one of my others, the one with the little doggy paws and the doggy, because that's the one that I want to show you what I love to do with. Okay, so this guy inside of here, let me show you inside of here. A lot of people that don't say, I've made these and I get too much. This is too much. Do you see that right there? So this guy is too much because I have the same and the same. My seam allowance on the inside, if I used a 1/4 inch here, I should use a 3/8 inch seam allowance here. So that's one of those things that you want to make sure that you do. When you sew this seam here, when you sew these seams here, when you sew your box bottom there, go ahead and make that seam allowance a little bit larger. This is the first time that I've done the same Fusible on the outside and the same Fusible on the inside, and I was hoping it would kind of smooth itself out. Although it is, now that I'm putting a little bit of weight on there. So that is smoothing itself out some. All right, so the ironing board is where I would be. This goes inside here. And we would press really good, press really good, press really good, press really good. All of that pressing, once you do that, it's going to give you a really cool storage pod. And this hanger, get a color that matches, but that's the ribbon that I had here. Okay, let's go back over to the cutting table, and I want to show you what I love to do. So you can do top stitching. If you look at this one, let's get to the sweet spot so you can see this. Right here, you can see this is a very light Fusible. SF101 on here, SF101 on here. It's lightweight. There's no bulk on here, and that makes it really easy for me to top stitch because this is foam and because this is 2 layers of a Fusible. This would have been great with the 1 layer of that Fusible that I showed you and then 1 layer of SF101 here. But what I like to do when I have a layer of foam or something heavier is make this right here of faux piping. Or faux binding. You can see here how I've left that out. I'm not doing any top stitching here. You can, but all of that bulk with foam right here makes it really hard to do. So these guys here, if you look to see, this one I used a 3/8, maybe even a little bit wider seam allowance. This is closer to a 1/4 inch. This is closer to a 1/4 inch. So you can see how the sizes vary just a little bit by the material that you're using and your seam allowance. I want to pull back over this one and show you. This guy here is our medium size, medium large. All right, so we've got medium large and we've got the small, extra small. So medium large, extra small, those are the new sizes of the storage pods that I have. 5 sizes now for you. Let me pull these back over. And remember, choose your fabric so that they fit the project. This is home deck fabric and it collapses so you can throw this in your backpack. But this is the extra large. This is the medium. This is the medium large. This is the small, and these guys right here are the extra smalls. So I'm going to pull this over too. It's a little bit easier to see this one than to see this. So extra large, medium large, medium, small, extra small. All right, guys, I hope this was helpful. I can't wait to see what you all do with these. I love getting your pictures. It is so much fun for me to see how creative you all are with the templates. I know it's been such a fun thing for me to be able to share with you, and I'm so thrilled to introduce 2 new sizes. Thanks for watching, guys.